monks and nuns who are here first. And so it is wonderful to have Venerable Bhante Yoga Rahula from Virginia. And he is here with us today, and it's always good to have you here, Bhante Rahula. And we also have Bhante Dhammagavesi from Virginia. This is your first time joining our discussion, and I have heard so much good about you, so it's always good to have you. So welcome to our biweekly discussion. And next we have Venerable Bhante Kamalasuri from Minnesota, and then we have Venerable Bhikkhuni Dhammadinna joining the discussion from Virginia. Then we have Venerable Bhante Jayasara joining the discussion from New Jersey. Then we have Venerable Sumedha, he's joining the discussion from Mississauga, Canada. Then we have Venerable Tridao joining the discussion from 2 weeks ago you were in Arizona, today you're back in Florida, I guess. Yeah, so I hope you're not affected by that hurricane. There was a big devastation, but I hope you're safe. And I know you're safe, that's why you join us. And then we have Venerable Shanta Sobana joining the discussion from Los Angeles. Then we have Venerable Ananda joining the discussion from Cambridge, Ontario, Canada. And then we have Venerable Bhante Janananda joining the discussion from Ottawa, Canada. We also have Bhante Kusala joining the discussion, but he's traveling. He's coming on the way to our temple from Boston, so it's always good to have you and have a safe flight to Toronto. And so I would like to give a warm welcome to all of you, and also to our Dhamma friends who are here on Zoom platform and who are watching this program live on Facebook and YouTube. And before we begin the discussion, I have a very kindful and respectful request. If possible, please share this program on your Zoom, in your social media timeline for the greater benefit of your friends or family members. And by sharing is also a way of practicing giving the gift of Dhamma to many in your side. So be kind enough to share this program on your social media timeline. And so today we are going to discuss the Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 131, known as the Bhatteraka Sutta. And I don't know whether anyone is here who would like to give the summary of the sutta. I normally ask the Venerable Ananda, Kalabovil Ananda, to would you like to give the summary, or? Well, I have prepared the presentation, and if not, but I would like to hear from you, Venerable Ananda, if you're ready.
Specifically look at it, but I can tell you the basic out of what I remember. In fact,
okay.
We have.
Okay. Otherwise, I can just bring the. I have a PowerPoint presentation of the sutta. So I think that would be nice, right? For the. So let me bring it here. Okay. Okay, so this is the so the topic of today's discussion is Buddha and his unique paths to creating an extraordinary night and day. So based on the Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 131, known as the Bhatteraka Sutta, and so Buddha says, monks, I will teach you the summary and exposition of one who has had an auspicious day. You shouldn't chase after the past or place expectations on the future. What is past is left behind. The future is as yet unreached. Whatever quality is present, you clearly see right there, not taken in, unshaken. That's how you develop the heart. ardently doing what should be done today, for who knows, tomorrow death. There is no bargaining with mortality and his mighty hold. Whoever lives thus ardently, relentlessly, both day and night, has truly had an auspicious day, extraordinary day. So says the peaceful sage, the Buddha. And how monks does one chase after the past? One gets carried away with the delight of, in the past I had such a form, body, in the past I had such a feeling, in the past I had such a perception, in the past I had such a thought fabrication, in the past I had such a consciousness. This is called chasing after the past. And how does one not chase after the past? One does not get carried away with the delight of, in the past I had such a form, body, in the past I had such a feeling, in the past I had such a perception, in the past I had such a thought fabrication, in the past I had such a consciousness. This is called not chasing after the past. And how does one place expectations on the future? One gets carried away with the delight of, in the future I might have such a form, body, in the future I might have such a feeling, in the future I might have such a perception, in the future I might have such a thought fabrication, in the future I might have such a consciousness. This is called placing expectations on the future. And how does one not place expectations on the future? One does not get carried away with the delight of, in the future I might have such a form, body, in the future I might have such a feeling, in the future I might have such a perception, in the future I might have such a thought fabrication, in the future I might have such a consciousness. This is called not placing expectations on the future. And how is one taken in with regard to present qualities? There is the case where an uninstructed, run of the mill person who has not seen noble ones, is not versed in the teachings of the noble ones, is not trained in the teachings of the noble ones, sees form as self, or self as possessing form, or form in self, or self as in form. He or she sees feeling as self, or self as possessing feeling, or feeling as in self, or self as in feeling. So and so forth, perception, thought fabrications, consciousness. And how is one not taken in with regard to present qualities? There is the case where a disciple of the noble ones, who has seen the noble ones, well versed in the teachings of the noble ones, is well trained in the teachings of the noble ones, does not see form as self, or self as possessing form, or form as in self, or self as in form. He or she does not see feeling, perception, thought fabrications as consciousness, as self, or self as possessing, uh, feeling, perception, thought fabrication, consciousness, or consciousness, feeling, perception, thought fabrication as in self, or self as in these aggregates, and this is called not being taken in with regard to present qualities. Then Buddha continues, you shouldn't chase after the past or place expectation of the future. What is past left behind? The future is as yet unreached. Whatever quality is present, you clearly see right there, right there. Not taken in, unshaken. That's how you develop the heart. Ardently doing what should be done today, for who knows tomorrow death. There's no bargaining with mortality and his mighty force. Whoever lives thus ardently, relentlessly, both day and night, has truly had an auspicious day. So says the peaceful sage. So this is the sutra that we find in the Majjhima Nikaya, and this is the technique or or the way the Buddha is teaching his disciples how to create such an extraordinary or peaceful or auspicious day and night. So now, based on this sutra, I have a very simple question. So, what does it mean? uh, Maybe, of course, we understand these technical terms. As monks, we read the sutras. We understand what Buddha talks when he talks about don't chase the past, don't chase the future, and just be right here now. This is the way to live a happy and peaceful life. This is the way to create the auspicious and extraordinary day and night. So, how can we explain this to the people in layman's terms? So, I know Bhante Yogavachan Rahula uh, wrote the book One Night Shelter. I don't know whether your journey. I know that's a biography, but I don't know whether your journey has any connection to this sutra, and how do you understand this sutra, Bhante Yoga Rahula?
Uh, well, thank you for allowing me to share. That sutra doesn't really have much to do with my autobiography, except for when I got to Sri Lanka and I started reading the sutras in my first year as a novice. That's almost 50 years ago now. This is one of the sutras that I really liked. And I had a whole year, and I had access to most of the English translations of the Pali text society of the Majjhima Nikaya, other Nikayas too. And when I read this sutta, I was reading them kind of in order, and I read sutta number 131, and to me, I interpret that as being grounded in the present moment. And also it comes from practicing the four foundations of mindfulness, because that was one of my main practices of developing, the vipassana, where samatha and vipassana, but especially the four foundations of mindfulness. And that's really what practicing the four foundations of mindfulness means: keeping your mind in the present moment, observing what is ever coming through your body, through the feelings, whatever feelings, the perceptions, the five aggregate space. So the four foundations of mindfulness is basically that practice. And even the Buddha said that by practicing the four foundations of mindfulness, the space of 7 days, if one was ardent and steadfast and ardent, day and night, one could, attain at the minimum never returning, or if not arhanship, but even never returning. So that really, that sutra was formed a kind of a basis of my practice, along, of course, with other teachings too. But then when I went on to the Sutta 132, I realized, my gosh, it repeats the same exact sutta. The summary and the stanzas, the same exact sutta. Then when I went to 133, again, third time, exact same sutta. And then the 134, the fourth time, says, my gosh, the Buddha, that's the only place that I'm aware of in the whole Tipitaka, or at least Majjhima Nikaya, where the Buddha repeated the same sutta 4 times. Basically, not the Buddha, but by other monks. But anyway, the same exact teaching. So it struck me, out of a 150, I think 2 suttas in Majjhima Nikaya, this sutta has been repeated 4 times. So it must be something important. It must be really important. And since then, within my own practice, I've, that's been one of my main practices, is using actually the breathing and the body as the way to help keep the mind grounded in the present moment, because the body is always in the present moment, and that's why I think the Buddha chose the first foundation of mindfulness as being mindfulness of breathing and mindfulness of the body, because when you're practicing all those sections, your mind is, the body is always in the present moment. Our mind is always going between the past and the future. So by following, practicing those different sections of the mindfulness of the body, of course, breathing helps you get into the body, but then the body itself, being aware of all your movements, all the sensations, the four elemental sensations, and so on. So I found that that was my main practice. The body is really the gateway to the mind. The Buddha saw that. But I also want to mention that these, there's other suttas. This teaching is kind of a cryptic teaching. Just don't run to the past, don't go to the future, and so on. So it's kind of cryptic, as you mentioned. And there's another sutta that the Buddha teaching, a very short teaching, which is also very cryptic, and all of you know it. It's the Ahia Sutta. So the Buddha's brief teaching of Ahia, in which he said, in whatever the seeing, there's only seeing. Whatever hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking, there's only that. And the meaning of that means there's no I that's doing that. And there's no object seen. There's just a phenomenon of seeing consciousness. And hearing, tasting, smelling, thinking consciousness. Arising and vanishing just from moment to moment. And so both of those were, some of my main training practices, but using the big foundations of mindfulness as the actual detailed instructions. And of course, the whole of the Eightfold Path is also, basically teaches you to live in the present moment by being mindful. And then there's also, different translations of the sutta. So I think the Bhikkhu Bodhi translates this sutta as one fortunate attachment.
Yeah.
Also, I like that one too, because, we talk in the Buddhism about you shouldn't have any attachments, right?
Yeah.
It's one fortunate attachment.
Yeah.
It's the attachment to being in the present moment, because it leads to, when the mind is in the present moment, there's nothing to judge, compare, like, dislike, and that's why it's happy. And attaining jhanas, when you attain first jhana and further on, I mean the mind or whatever its concentration object is, it's also in the present moment, and that's why piti and the sukha are there. That's why it arises. And equanimity arises when you attain, get the mind to be grounded and centered in the present moment. And also ideal solitude. I think some of you are familiar with the late great Jnanadeepa, Bhante, the French monk. Wait, no, not him, excuse me. I'm sorry. Jnanananda. Nanda. He wrote a book on ideal solitude, which is basically the same sutta. So those three translations, ideal solitude, one fortunate attachment, and a single excellent night, they all basically refer to the same thing. Because when the mind is in the present moment, our whole life is revolved around the past and the future. Everything that we see, hear, taste, smell, touch, and remember in our mind remembers it from something from the past, either with a liking or disliking, projection in the future with more greed or anger or hatred. So, that's what keeps our mind swirling around. So it's in the present moment, when we're grounded and flowing in the present moment. That's the ideal solitude, even from the self. So anyway, I think that's...
Thank you. But, I think you just shared the essence of the sutra, how the lay people. I said, when you explain your own way of how you understand, then the lay people, especially people in the West, they can understand it well. So I think that's why I wanted to hear from you right at the beginning of this sutra. And of course, we are going to ask you more questions as we keep going with this discussion.
Tonight I have to leave at 7 p.m. again because I will come in for meditation. So.
Okay. Thank you, Bante. So next, I see Bante Kusala. I know Bante Kusala gave a Dhamma talk. I think you gave a Dhamma talk on this sutra to a group of people in Sri Lanka. So then when I saw that, and I said, wow, we had to discuss this sutta. So Bante Kusala, what's in your mind? How do you perceive this?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite sutras, like Bhante Rahula mentioned. I completely connect with everything he said, and I appreciate that. I have this one favorite line I remember from the sutta that goes as Yadatitam Pahinantam Atpattancha Anagatam Achupannanta Yang Dharmam Katatata Vipassati.
Yeah.
Right? So, and the way I would like to translate it is to a different approach. So let's think of it this way. When we think about the past, we think about it now. When we think about the future, we think about it now. So all we have is now. Achupannanta Yandhamma refers to the now, the experience of us as it happens, as things arise right here, right now. And that is actually asking us to look at the dependent origination, dependent co-arising of the experience, which is often ignored because of the thick layer of ignorance that we all have. But the moment we look at the experience with the wisdom of the dependent arising, we understand that everything, whether it is positive or negative, everything that we experience is based on these underlying mechanisms. The object finding a subject, a person, and then building a world that does not exist. And I will give a metaphor to help us understand this from Venerable Patukurunde Jnanananda. He writes in his book Concept and Reality about a magician who happens to be in a fortress and he sees a bunch of bones of a tiger, and he decides to resurrect this tiger, and the tiger ends up eating the magician. This is what happens to us, that we create this mental world based on ignorance and training and views of the self, and that tiger ends up devouring us. We get tired, we build a language around our suffering, and we end up going through many cycles of suffering because of not knowing the mechanism behind it. It is like understanding a car, and when you understand the mechanism behind it, and when you take down the pieces and separate them, you will stop calling it a car because you don't see a car in there. So the experience of dependent origination and experience of how five aggregates manifest is all I can see in those lines in Bhadrekaratta Sutta. And I think Ekaratta can be translated as you connected. I think Ekaratta is like Eka is living alone. Ratta is like liking that living alone. People always think that we need company, but when you start to give good company to yourself, you don't need a second person, a adutiya. You don't require that second person's company. That you start to appreciate this moment, like Bhante Rahula mentioned very much. And in other verses, we find Ati Vihipantan Sochaya Napajanpanti Nagakam Achupane Yataya Shinavano Pastivity, something like that. So what is gone is gone. Do not fixate on the future, do not be anxious about the future. Look at the experience right here and right now, and you start to let go of the mental world that you have built, and you are able to see through the net of what is, and see through and undo all the stuff that you built in your mind, mind stuff.
Yeah.
I believe that is how one can have an ideal, beautiful night with ideal solitude. That is all I wanted to add. And I'm on my way on the road, not on a plane, Monday. And it happened to be perfectly aligning with the tea stop I had somewhere in Albany area. And I'll see you later tonight. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Bante Kusala. See you soon. I think now I see there are a few more hands raised by our venerable monks, and I want to really jump into this sutra. So maybe we can. The Buddha, how does one chase after the past? Is it one gets carried away with the delight of in the past I had such a form, feeling, perception, thought fabrication, consciousness. So here's a question for all of you. Now, what are these things? Like getting carried away with the delight of in the past I had such a form and so forth. So what does it mean? Bhante Ananda from Cambridge, Canada.
Before we go on to that first question, I also wanted to touch upon something which is probably a different way of looking at the whole idea. And it happened to again, like Bhante Ramada mentioned, one of the favorite suttas of my whole time. You find it 4 times in Majjhima. And in fact, in some of the suttas, it goes into much further explanation to this event. And what I wanted to mention is that our mind does a lot of abstraction, there's a lot of conceptual thinking. But when we look at this word, and the idea of Panchupanna, it's most of the time we generally take the idea of the present moment. And in the West, it's a great catchphrase, being the present moment. But if we really look at like the past and the present is nothing but an abstraction or a sankhara in our mind. The present moment is also an abstract concept that we have. We really don't have a present moment that we can ever hold on to. In fact, it's like the Niagara Falls. We can never see the Niagara Falls, but we see a stream of water running through and we call it Niagara Falls. If we take a snapshot of that, maybe there's one frame, but in our life we don't find a snapshot of anything, but we are exposed to a continuous stream or flux of things. So, Panchupanna, I think it very sufficiently explains, it's saying the present moment. Of course, the language limitation is that we have to come up with a word for that, but Panchupanna is more about, even Bhante Kusala mentioned, the independent origination. It must necessarily be done whole thing, rather than being bound by a time constraint. Like if we go to the Patana Pradana, we have 24 ways of how the or how this causality works. So, Panchupanna Yogama Kathakatha Vipassati goes more under how we see this dependent origination rather than seeing at a present moment, because even the idea of a present moment is can be a little abstract that way. The other thing is, I think one of the other most important things is the Nandi, the word Nandi. How do we rejoice about it? The simple way to look at it is that we go to visit a place that we like, or we meet some people. It's a great gathering, so we take a selfie or a photo. Even when monks come to our temple, we take a photo usually. But after a few months, you look at it and then you rejoice. You look at that past moment, you look at the place you have visited, things you have eaten. You go on to your social media timeline and it naturally gives that notification 10 years ago you were doing this. So I mean, and I think while the idea of rejoice is mentioned here, the opposite, which is not mentioned, is also there being upset about it, being lamenting about it, or being sorrowful, regretful, or even having the ill will about past activities which have happened and has passed, and even for the future, which is not even happened, but we have a contemplation or a conceptual idea about what might happen, and I think, like typically the format of the Vitaka usually was around most of the suttas, Sabhasa Sutta, Bhattikarata, around the concept of Attana, myself, and me and mine, the concept of me and mine, and how we don't find that me and mine even within the five aggregates. So it's always directed that way, but apart from that, um, how we can use the five aggregates and the time boundness, because when you take the idea of skandha naturally comes with Hati, Karnataka, Vartamana, Molarika Sukshama, Nila Pranita, etc. So the idea of time can be used to sort of decipher the five aggregates and not finding ultimate ultimate me or mine in that, and can be looked at that way. But from a very simplistic form, like Patrick mentioned earlier, that whatever we are going through, we are living in that fantasy world, which is not even a complete record that we have. For example, no one remembers what you had for breakfast on February 22nd. We have our past. And based on the partial memory, we have certain highs and lows that we remember. If we don't remember, we can't even rejoice or be upset about it. But the ones we remember, we are upset or we are rejoicing. So the idea again looks at the Nandi, or the rejoicing leading into making it desire, a habit, and a must want in the future. Nandi. So that's what I see in this country.
Yeah, thank you, Venerable Ananda. And now, next, I would like to, I know Bhante Santasobana, Bhante Jiranaresh have a holier thought, okay? But let me go to Venerable Bhante Jayasara from New Jersey. I know sometimes you leave early, so I want to hear your perspective of this sutra. And how do you see this sutra? Like how to create such an extraordinary auspicious day and night? And what's your reading on this sutra?
Thank you, Bhante, Sangha, and friends. So I did want to respond to what you said. What is looking to the past?
Yeah.
And what came up to me is something I always talk about when I talk about like rebirth to Westerners, giving my Dhamma talks. I remember vividly, I grew up Catholic, and I remember vividly being an altar boy on the altar with the priest, and the priest is doing the benedictions. And I'm thinking, was I Julius Caesar or Alexander the Great in a past life? and that's what that is. What was I this in the past? Was I that in the past? And so like that was, I was like maybe 10 years old. But that's the focusing on the past. It's the same as, well, what will I be in the future? Maybe in my next life I'll be an awesome deva, or all kinds of wasted daydreaming, basically. But as I tend to do, I try to find, because there's so many Bhantes with so many different perspectives, I try to find an angle that might not be as easily covered. And one of the things that comes up with this sutta is like, especially if you're around like Westerners and not necessarily quite Buddhist circles, there's almost like a fetish about the present moment. It's a sort of the present moment, the present moment, the present moment. And in the suttas, with rare exception, you don't actually see the Buddha talk about the present moment. Even in this sutta, what he's talking about is presently arisen states. What is arising right now? What is arising in your mind? Right? What feelings are arising in your body? And then you're keeping your focus on that. And that's what Bhattikarata is. It's like keeping your focus on what is arising. Not what's in the past, not what's in the in the future. What is arising, investigating it, learning what you can from it, and developing wisdom and insight from it. one of my favorite lines, the Buddha, I don't remember what sutta it is, but the Buddha was talking to a person, and he says, let go the past, let go the future, I shall teach you Dhamma.
Mm.
I love that line, and I think about that. I remind myself about that. Let go the past, let go the future. Now is the time for Dhamma. Of course, I also bring in the mountains closing in too. That's a good one. Good one to remind myself to have a good day, good night by being present and investigating and being enmeshed in satipatthana, right? Mindfulness, and really understanding what is arising, as opposed to your mind being everywhere else, thinking about everything else. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you for reminding that let go of the past, let go of the future. It's time for the Dhamma now. I teach you Dhamma. So everything is possible if you're right here and now. So thank you so much for reminding us that. And now next, in meantime, if anybody has any question regarding this sutra, please feel free to ask. I will be monitoring the Facebook and YouTube the chat. And if you have questions for any Venerable Monk or from Venerable Yoga Rahula, please feel free to ask that question. Meantime, let me go to Venerable Shanta Sobana from Los Angeles. So what's in your mind, Bhante Santasobana?
Thank you very much, Venerable Sirs. So actually, when it comes to this sutra, there are different kind of sutras in Tripitaka. This is a sutra Buddha himself directly addressed the monks.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes there are sutras Buddha explain about the lay life, but this is it is very important to know the very background of the sutra, because then we can understand the application. So when it comes to our conventional life, I think sometimes there are sutras we cannot directly take to kind of like ordinary life, because to understand the sutra and understand the background and understand practice, especially because when it comes to this sutra, it's directly talk about what to practice. So then sometimes when we go to lay life, maybe this is not going to directly applicable. But for monks, it is especially one of the main sutra that the Buddha explained here. So, Bhaddha Eka Ratta Sutta, this is the sutta that the name come with the component of 3 words, Bhaddha Eka Ratta. So Bhaddha itself explained like the luck, fortunate, auspicious. And when it comes to this luck and auspicious and fortune, we have to go to the English word. So the Latin word, it comes with the kind of like, it explained for good or bad for both. But when it comes to English, modern English, they take this luck more than it as a kind of like a luck. It talk about the destiny. But destiny we create according to the present situation.
Mm-hmm.
And other thing is the wealth. That also one meaning when it comes to English etymology. So wealth, that according to the present situation, what we accumulate for our future, also here called the luck. So when it comes to that, I think that word is more kind of like applicable for this sutra, because when it comes to the Buddhism, in foundation, we never talk about the luck. We talk about profitability.
Mm-hmm.
What is profitable? So then it's a kind of like a creating the destiny out of our own present situation, out of our own action, is a kind of like here mentioned as a Bhaddha. And the Eka means the one and single solidarity. And the Ratta, it has many meanings when it comes to Pali language. One is called night. But at the same time in Pali, this Ratta, the the use as a entire 24-hour day. So as example, in English world, when we book a hotel, sometimes we ask how many nights you stay here. So that's mean how many days you're going to stay there. Even though it is a night that we mean kind of like from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. But when it comes to the general word, how many nights you stay, that means how many days you're going to stay. So according to that, one is the night and the other one is called the attachment. So here attachment is a kind of like, as we know in Buddhism, we say that Dhamma is kind of like a raft. So once you cross the river, you have to let go the raft. So like that, but once you cross the river, you have to let go the raft. So like that, when it comes to attachment, a lot of people talk about, oh, Buddhism don't talk about attachment. But here, until we attain to the Nibbana or the liberation, what is the highest, most profitable attachment we should within us is kind of like a Ratha. So, because in day-to-day life, when we have a strong attachment, we give our priority for that. In day-to-day life, whatever we do, sometimes we give up our food, and sometimes we give up our sleep, and sometimes give up our basic need, and focusing to that main desire to fulfill it. So even in day-to-day life, when we have kind of like, when we, now it is a Katina ceremony season, so when the ceremony comes closer, sometimes we don't sleep, and sometimes we don't take dana, or we don't take lunch, or sometimes we miss our very basic needs, but we keep focusing to fulfill that ceremony. So like that, when it comes to, if we understand what is the major thing in our life, we give up most of our day-to-day things and focus to that. And other thing is why it become kind of like that very auspicious night, because the night in conventional world is a very important thing. The most of, when it comes to night, people always focusing to enjoy their life, like most of the musical shows at night, dancing at night, party at night, gathering at night. And Friday night means it is not to sleep, it is to party. So like that, the people in conventional world, they use this night not to kind of like to have rest, or kind of like to focus towards whatever the important things to enjoy. But here, what the Buddha said, when we recognize what is the most important thing in our life, we sacrifice our night for that. So when it comes to that, there is another sutra related to this kind of idea in the Samyukta Nikaya, Theranama Sutta. So there was a monk called Thera, and he used to always be alone himself. He go to Pindapata himself, and he used to he used to meditate himself. He used to walk himself. He had a completely isolated life, and himself, why he having it, he used to kind of like a lecture for other monks to do the same way. And the monks got confused, and they came to Buddha and asked, oh, that venerable Thera, and he stay himself, and he doing all the things himself, and he also advised for us also to do things. Is that right? So then the Buddha called him and asked, is this true that you do this? And the venerable Thera told, yes, I am doing it. But at that point, Buddha never criticized that, or Buddha never rejected that. But what the Buddha taught, rather than being physically alone, there is a way that mentally you can be more solitude. Mentally you can be yourself, even you are with the community. Because when it comes to the very foundation of the Buddha's teaching, we know, we always told the community of Sangha. So the community is very important. Gathering is important. It's not just being alone ourselves. It's important. So then, but is it profitable for us? That is the main focus that we have to look. And when it comes to here, there are many sutras, as other venerable monks mentioned, not to think about past or not to think about the future. But here, as we know, in the when it comes to the Buddha's teaching, Buddha himself, his character based on the past, or because when he went to the Kimbulla, that his hometown, and when he go the Pinda father, and the father saw him, and then the father told, in our family, no one go and beg like this, and why you do this? And then the Buddha himself mentioned, this is not that your son, or this is not your family doing this. This is the way of the Buddha. So, and we know when it comes to Jataka stories, all the Jataka stories based with the reflection of the past. And even when it comes to many meditation teachings, we know to go into the right technique, we have to know about certain history about the person. Even the Buddha himself, at many times, used certain techniques related to his past. And at the same time, Buddha himself, before he go into certain situations, like Brahmana Udaya, and there are many others. And himself, Buddha, decide what to do in the future, not just in the moment. He didn't depend on always in the moment. But here we have to understand, it is not about thinking about past or thinking about the future. It's about with our condition of the mind. In what condition we think about the past or the future. If the person think about the past or the future related to the greed, hatred, and the delusion, that is unprofitable. Otherwise, when it comes to the meditation itself, the one of the meaning is memory. So how are we going to explain what is memory without the timeline? So when it comes to our self-experience, even what is mean by self-experience without our past, the timeline? Because when it comes to experience means, of course, there should be a certain timeline. Otherwise, what is the meaning of experience? So like that, when it comes to here, that thinking about our past, even when we go to our Vinaya Karma, or when we talk about our discipline reports, when we gather as monks, if we have done something in the past, so I have to reflect about it in the present moment, and I have to tell it to my elder monks. So that is a kind of like a thing that we have to understand when we use the word, because in the nowadays a lot of people misunderstand, or not to think about the past or not to think about the future. No, when it comes to the Buddhism, it's always related to the cause and effect. So cause and effect always depend on related to the time. That's what we call the karma. So that is our one of the foundation. But here we have to understand, with the self-centered, egocentric, unchangeable mind, if we think I was the same person, or that whatever happened in the past is the same person now, or whatever in the moment that as I am going to be the same person in the future, that is wrong. That's not applicable. So otherwise, when it comes to here, we always I have to understand that whatever happened in the past, not to think about is not good. So whatever in the future, if whatever happened, if we neglect about it, that also not good. Then how about we motivate ourselves, or how about we think about our own liberation in the future? Because we talk about not about in the moment of liberation, we are focusing to the in the future of liberation. So then we have to understand, whatever we think in the moment, without self-centered, egocentric mind, or without greed, hatred, or the delusion, if we are capable to reflect on something, I think it will help us to see how things come to be as they are without interference of self-centered idea. So that is we can have more deeper understanding related to cause and effect. Thank you.
So thank you, Venerable Shanta Somana. Those are beautiful thoughts. And I'm also being mindful of what the Yoga Vajra said he would leave at 7 p.m. So there's a question for him. That's why I was kind of raising my hand, but I wanted to continue with more thoughts about the Shanta Somana, okay? So, Bhante Yoga Rahula, there's a question for you. And now people here in the sutra, we see Buddha is teaching that we should not put expectations on the future. Now, even we have a goal. There's a realization of nirvana. We want to achieve nirvana. We want to. If you don't think of the future, then how can you live your life? So, you have to unmute yourself, Bhante.
Yes, of course. We all have a future. We expect we're going to live in. I have plans. I have to plan in advance. Somebody invites me to come next month. I have to mark it on my calendar and so many other things. But it's about obsessing about it and putting all of your eggs in one basket. That if impermanence comes by and disrupts those plans, it's not going to break you. You have something you can do something else. So it's not that we can't think about the past or the future, but it's, again, creating negative thoughts about it, as the former speaker was talking about developing greed, hatred, and delusion based on those ideas of the past and the future. But when we're not thinking about it and know how to, and even you can be present, and as Bhante, I think Kusala mentioned, thoughts of the past are actually in the present moment, right? So when we remember something, that's a thought in the present moment. But if they're not necessary to think, we don't get led out of the present moment. You can stay in the present moment. Actually means just, if there is a present moment, it's a vibration of awareness. It's an awareness that's not creating perceptions from the past or the future, and not thinking about self or others. And there's a subtle vibration within consciousness that what I call present moment awareness, to which there's no thoughts of the past or the future, and no thoughts of self and I. You can get into that state of awareness. And that's, for better or for worse, or just for the sake of conversation, what I would call present moment awareness. But even a thought of the past or future is a thought in the present moment, as long as you're not getting carried away by it.
So, Bhante Rahula, now, when we are talking about this auspicious day and night, or the extraordinary day and night, so does it mean, or having an auspicious day, auspicious night mean, like you're not assailed by any kind of negative thoughts, you're not disturbed, you're not annoyed, you are at the peaceful moment? Is that the auspicious day or night?
I would say so, yes. But also in that night, one could attain entering the stream or even a higher stages at that night too. If the mind has developed the factors of enlightenment and is in the present moment. So in that case, it would be truly auspicious. And in that night of practicing diligently, you can attain previously unattained state, whether it's a higher jhana or even a magga and phala, or just having increased your ability to stay in the present moment, like increase, instead of staying in meditation for just 1 hour, maybe you went for 3 or 4 hours, experiencing the piti and the sukha that comes with those states of mind. So I would say that's auspicious.
Okay, so can we simply say that this experience of samadhi or experience the jhana itself is a kind of auspicious moment.
Of course, because we're not always in that state. So in meditation, actually, you're going to like, but not necessarily even without attaining the first jhana. For a lot of people, beginner meditators, even just staying in a state of good awareness and practice, one in getting insights. That's auspicious too. You can get insights, into anicca, dukkha, anatta while practicing. Even if you're not in a jhana, you can get insights, certain levels of insight. So that's auspicious because it's something like, wow, it's something new. So that's auspicious because it keeps you wanting to do more. When you gain a little bit more, something you haven't seen before or experienced before, naturally it's going to encourage you to not give up and to want to keep your practice up.
Yeah, that's a beautiful answer. Thank you, Bhante Radha. So next we see Venerable.
I'm going to be signing off now. So thank you all of you.
See you
See you again.
Thank you. Venerable Trudeau from Florida, what's in your mind?
Salutations to all of the most venerables present here today. We have a full house today on my screen. Hello to all of the lay people who are joining us. I'm safe and well. As you noticed earlier, the sun was hitting this part of my face, so half of my face was very bright, and I had to compensate with the light here. I'm on a second story building, so if I get flooded, that means all of St. Petersburg is flooded. So I'm safe and well here in Florida.
Wonderful, that's good to hear.
I was also able to survey the damages that was done here locally because I live on a peninsula surrounded by 3 sites of water. So very, very grateful to still be here, and my thoughts go out to all of the people in Florida and across North Florida, all the way to, I think, Georgia too, and the Carolinas are also heavily affected. We are anticipating 2 more hurricanes to come. A reference this sutta today is a very beautiful sutta in reminding us about the present moment. Life is short. How short is life actually is? Just about 2 hours ago, I worked a cancer case where the gentleman is in his early 50 years old. And I just so happens to know him on the outside in society. I was activated as a medical interpreter today. When we look at life, if a human were to live up to 80 years old, let's just say 80, usually 76 for men, and I think 76 for women or men is a little bit lower, but we'll say 80 as a ballpark. When we take 80 years old, we spend 1/3 of our life sleeping. So we can subtract like 25 years on or about of sleeping, and then we subtract the first 20 years of our life making mistakes. That's the adolescent days. So right there, we half of that is now you have 40 years left, and then you subtract a little bit more for school. So literally, you have on or about 30 years for the maximum capacity for the enjoyment of life. How much of that 30 years on or about are you actually living in the present moment? How many of those nights, when you break it down into scientific and just the nitty-gritty math part of it, just for fun, some people like numbers, we're able to conceptualize statistics. That's how we're able to make decisions in life. And one must ask, and I have witnessed some really rough parts of people's lives. I had a student in his 20s. Because the recent novice Joselito that I sent picture to Venerable Saranapala, he was very public about his drug use. He was very public about his depression. And before he became a novice a couple days ago, I used to drop him off and he says, "I'm going to go party." And I go, with With who exactly? Because you say this most of the nights that I drop you off.